Hey guys, a very important package arrived last week while I was out on a workshop. It's a copy of the very first digital camera that I ever owned, a Panasonic DMC FZ30. The moment I found it online, I couldn't help myself but buy it, and I didn't even second guess that. This is where it all started, and holding it again makes me realise something. The camera wasn't the problem back then, I was. Because I didn't know what really mattered in photography, and today I want to help you by telling you what I would tell myself if I had just received this camera. If you stick around to the end, I'll even share a bonus tip that I believe is a secret sauce to developing your very own photography style in no time. I run a photography gallery here in Outback Australia, and I've been photographing the landscapes now for over 20 years. These prints behind me are the result of everything I learned after this camera. Some of it I figured out the hard way. Some of it took longer than it should have, but one thing I know is absolutely none of it was in the manual. If you're just starting out, or even if you've been shooting for a while and you just want a few tips to help you grow, this video is for you. Especially if you feel anything like I did the day that I got this camera. The first lesson's one I wish I would have understood much earlier, because it changes the way you see everything even before you lift the camera to your eye. When I first picked up the camera, I thought my job was to find a beautiful place and photograph it. That was my mistake. You're not photographing the place, you're photographing the light, and more specifically, you're photographing a subject within that light. A rock formation, a single tree, the way a ridge catches the last 10 minutes of light in the day. If you can't tell me what your subject is before you press the shutter, you're not ready to press it yet. And identifying your subject's only half of it. The other half is reading the conditions around it. When I arrive at a location these days, I'm subconsciously asking myself a set of questions before I even take the camera out of the bag. Where's the light coming from? Where will it be in 30 minutes? What are the clouds doing? Are they building or clearing? Is the atmosphere hazy or clean? Is there wind? Because wind means movement, and movement changes everything. This is a learnable skill. It's not instinct most people are born with. It's pattern recognition that you build on by showing up and paying attention over time. The photographers who consistently make images that stop you in your tracks are not luckier than anyone else. They're better at reading what's about to happen than the people standing next to them. If you look at any of the prints in my gallery, I can describe every detail of that scene. But the reason that they work is because I understood what the conditions were about to do, and I was already in position when they did. When I was shooting on this camera, I was reacting when I should have been anticipating. And that brings me to the second lesson. Because once you can see what the conditions are doing, you have to give them time to become something. Nobody teaches beginners that patience is actually a skill. They teach you the exposure triangle, they teach you your composition rules. Nobody sits you down and says, the thing standing between you and a great landscape image is probably your willingness to wait. But here's what I've come to understand. Patience in landscape photography is not passive. It's not just standing around hoping something happens, it's active. It's connected directly to lesson one. Because if you've learned to read the conditions, patience becomes purposeful. You're not waiting blindly, you're waiting because you can see what's building. You learn to read the signs, the way that a cloud formation's moving, the way that the atmosphere starts to warm before the golden hour fully arrives. The way the light on the horizon shifts in the last 15 minutes before it drops. These things you can't learn from a tutorial. You learn them by staying out when you want to leave. I spent an entire afternoon at a location in the ranges once. Waited for hours, flat light, almost all of it. I nearly left, but 20 minutes before dark, the cloud and light did exactly what I'd been hoping they would. I made one of my favourite images of all time. I nearly gave up and drove home before it happened. The lesson here is to stay longer, every time, and while you're staying, pay attention to what happens. That's where the real learning is. There's a version of landscape photography education that tells you to travel. Get to Iceland, go to New Zealand, Those places are extraordinary, and I've been, and I'd go back tomorrow. But I've watched beginners arrive in spectacular locations and come home with nothing usable. Not because the place let them down, because they hadn't built the skills to make anything of it when they got there. I shoot in the Australian outback constantly. It's not the most dramatic landscape on earth, but it's where I learnt to see. I understand what the light does out here in summer versus winter. I start to notice what the place does before a storm rolls in, and what the light does up high in the ranges. The little patterns you only recognise after you've spent real time here. You can't buy that kind of connection with a plane ticket. You build it by showing up in the same places again and again until you stop being surprised and start anticipating. When I was shooting on this camera, I was already planning trips that I hadn't earned yet. I should have been going back to the same creek bed just out of town, learning photography until I understood it completely. Learn where you live first. The exotic stuff will mean something when you get there. The fourth lesson seems too simple, but it took me far too long to accept the camera was never the real problem. When I was shooting on this camera, I wanted the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I'll admit it, I was convinced the images that I was imagining were just beyond what this camera could deliver. But here's the conflict. It wasn't this one either, or this one. I could keep going, but you get the point. The images I wanted weren't on the other side of a better camera, they're on the other side of better skills. And I'm lucky enough today to shoot with Nikon's top bodies. They're amazing. I've tested cameras in conditions that would make most equipment fall apart. And I still believe in this concept completely. The camera you have right now is almost certainly good enough to take great landscape photos. But here's something nobody tells you. When you're starting out, if you want to spend money on something that will genuinely improve your images before a camera upgrade, buy the best quality tripod you can. A solid tripod changes everything for landscape work. Sharp images in low light, compositions that you can fine tune without rushing, the discipline of slowing down. You'll get more out of a quality tripod than a camera upgrade in almost all situations. That's not a popular thing to say, but it's true. The best camera you own is the one that gets you out the door. The fifth lesson is one that can be a bit confronting at first, but it might be one of the fastest ways to grow. Photography can be a lonely craft when you're learning. You go out alone, you edit alone, you post something and you get told it's great by friends and family, or you get nothing at all. Neither one of those things helps you grow. One of the best things you can do early, and I mean genuinely early, is to find someone whose work you respect and put your images in front of them. A mentor, a friend who shoots, a camera club, an online community with real standards. It doesn't matter what the format is. What matters is the feedback is honest and constructive. The images I learnt the most from were not the ones that got good responses. They were the ones where someone I trusted said, "This almost works." And here's why it doesn't quite, and that specific kind of feedback is worth more than any tutorial you will find online. And I'll admit it, it's uncomfortable. Putting your work in front of someone who will tell you the truth is uncomfortable. But that discomfort is exactly where your growth will happen. Find your people, find someone you look up to and ask them to be honest with you. That conversation will save you years of painfully slow learning. The sixth lesson is one I think every photographer learns eventually, usually after spending far too long trying to fix an image that was never quite there to begin with. There's a belief in beginner photography that editing is where you fix things. That if the light was a bit flat or the exposure was a bit off, the edit will sort it out. And I understand why, because the tools that we have access to these days are extraordinary. You can pull shadows, push highlight, to adjust colour in ways that genuinely feel like magic. But here's what 20 years of making prints has taught me. Editing is a process to make great images better. It's not a process to rescue mistakes. And here's the thing, you can usually see it. When an image has been pushed hard in post-processing to compensate for something that should have been done in camera, it has a funny quality to it, like a flatness or a feeling of effort rather than a feeling of intention. It really makes it onto the walls. When you get it right in camera, the exposure is considered, the light is right, the composition deliberate. The edit becomes the final creative step, not just a salvage operation. And the results reflect that difference completely. So slow down before you press the shutter. The discipline of getting it right in the moment is worth far more time than the same effort in trying to recover it in post-processing. Before I wrap this up, there's one more lesson that sits underneath all of the others, and it's very little to do with the camera. When you're learning photography, it's really easy to become so consumed by all of the technical things. The settings, the composition, the light, the histogram, that you completely forget to actually look with your own eyes at that thing in front of you. I've been at locations where I was so focused on the technical process that I barely registered what I was standing in front of. And I can see it in the images. There's something missing, not technically, but experientially. The image is correct, it just doesn't feel like I've been there. The photographers whose work genuinely moves you when you look at their images, you feel like you're in the place with them. That doesn't come from a camera, it comes from the photographer having actually been there. Not just physically, but present, attentive, aware of the smell of the air and the sound of the wind and even the feeling of the ground. All of those things translate into the final image. Maybe not directly, but they inform the way that you see, the way that you frame, and the way that you edit later. You bring personal experience into the process and therefore into the image. So put the camera down for a few minutes when you arrive somewhere. Look, breathe, let the place register, then pick it up. Your images will show the difference. 20 years, 6 things, and even a bonus lesson. I'd go back to say to myself, if this had arrived today. Read the light and identify your subject. Incredibly important skill. Patience is an active skill. Don't think things will just come to you. Learn in your backyard first. The camera was never the problem. Find people who will tell you the truth, get it right in camera, and be present, actually present in the wonderful moments in nature that you'll get to experience as a landscape photographer. If you're just starting out, pick one. Work on it until it's second nature and then come back for the next one. If these things landed for you, a like and a subscribe really means a lot to me. It's how you'll know when my next video goes live. Drop a comment below which one you're working on at the moment. Until next time, stay safe and keep shooting.